At this time, I will introduce, while we're doing the setup, Dr. Gretchen Kerr, who is the Executive Director of the Compassion and Reconciliation Center for Northland Church, based in Florida. It is a 20,000 member network of churches that are engaged openly, honestly, and courageously in ending the issues that divide people while preaching the ministry of reconciliation, which is a ministry that we all have and are given by Christ. And it is obvious by the number of chairs here that more people than Gretchen is going to come on stage. So will the whole group of folk whose names I don't know come and hang out with Gretchen on stage, and maybe we'll have an opportunity for each of those persons to be introduced.
Hi. Well, this has been just such an amazing opportunity for me, and I'm really thankful for Joshua and others that have put this together. So we're going to try to get practical at this point and really begin to talk about some things that can be done and what people are doing right now in terms of both of these issues. So just a little bit about me. At Northland, and some of you may have heard Dr. Hunter. He was here the first day speaking about some of the things we do. My role there is to collaborate between government, nonprofit, and churches and try to bring those three entities together to do work together. And one of the things that I figured out was we needed to collaborate because all of us together will work much stronger, faster, and further together and not apart. And in those collaborations, couple of points that I feel are really important is unity and diversity. And diversity does not mean division. And so with the diversity, what I figured out and what I believe is oftentimes we're missing people from the table. And when we miss people from the table, then we're not able to be complete, because without everybody there, we're not whole. And so I liken it to the fact of a vehicle. A vehicle, you need 4 wheels to get where you're going. And if everyone's not at the table, you're running on 3 wheels. I can get there, but it's a bumpy ride. And I might not get there as fast as I could otherwise. So that's really important to us. And at Northland, Dr. Hunter's done a really good job of bringing together both of these topics of racial reconciliation through the environment. We're from Seminole County, Florida. Many of you may be familiar with Sanford, Florida. It was put on the map by a tragic incident there. And Dr. Hunter and about 100 other pastors and leaders of the community got together to have a conversation on how they will continue to move forward in spite of the great differences and things that were happening. And I personally believe together those wonderful pastors were what kept the law and order going in our community. And it didn't erupt into many of the things that we see on the TVs today. So as a follow-up to that, we were fortunate enough to be involved with Josh and their initiative for the Selma movie. And we actually had an opportunity to do a pre-showing of that, partnering with one of the African-American churches in Sanford. And it was really cool because we rented out a whole theater, and we were able to get 2 huge auditoriums like this and offer tickets to both congregations. And then we just split them up randomly. And so we were there working together, listening to the movie, and then afterwards, through technology, we linked the theaters together, and that was not an easy feat, by the way. But both Dr. Hunter and Pastor Wright came up front and addressed the issues from their perspectives, and then we took questions from the audience, which was really a great time of coming together. And then out of that, they asked for who would like to continue this conversation, who wants to really get involved and continue the conversation. And so they then took that information and pulled together, there's about a team of 30 folks from both of the churches that are now meeting regularly and working together and talking together about this issue, about how it's impacting our community. So that's the racial reconciliation piece of it. And then on the human trafficking side of it, I lead part of our human trafficking task force in Orlando. One of the subcommittees is the Faith Alliance. It is the faith collaborative of the churches in the community. And so we started that about 2 years ago when the task force began. And we now have over 62 churches that meet regularly once a month. And we move from church to church, and we talk about things that are ways that we can do things. And I'll give you 3 quick points that I talk about whenever we do this. So we invite people to be together and participate in one of 3 ways. One, as an individual, because there are many churches that don't yet embrace this topic of anti-human trafficking. So as an individual, we invite people to come to the meetings and hear what we're doing and learn and understand prevention issues and some of the further issues. Hopefully, they can then bring that back to their church and engage their church. The second way that they can engage is through their church. So we allow each one of the churches to explain and talk about some of the things that they're working on in their own churches. Some large churches have ministries that do some great things. Smaller churches have some small things that they do. We all learn from each other from what's going on. And then the third way, as a collaborative organization, all of the churches working together, we do things together. So there's a huge awareness day in January that we all volunteer and work together. We do a community-wide prayer walk, which is amazing. So we provide a prayer guide, and all over the community, each one of the churches gather their own people and do a prayer walk. So we are all walking and praying at the same time. It's powerful. We've done backpack drives where each of the churches, churches love to gather things, right? So we have hundreds of backpacks that came in with hygiene supplies and things for folks when they're rescued. And then we distribute those out to the Department of Children and Families and to law enforcement when they rescue. So there's a note in there, and there's clothing, and there's some basic needs. So those are just some of the ways that we at Northland are doing this, and I would like to hear from some of my folks here with me about some of the things that they're doing. So we want to start on the end and just let us know who you are and briefly some of the things that you're doing.
Absolutely. So hi guys, my name is Onia Fennell Okwabi. I serve at People's Church under Pastor Chris Beard, who you heard from yesterday. I also work with the Mosaics Global Network, which is a global network of multi-ethnic churches. So we've been dedicated to the idea that for us never to have multiple conversations about human rights issues, we need to be having those conversations together on Sunday mornings as congregations that are united. We have not traditionally done that in America. In fact, today, 86% of congregations are still divided by race. But we're very grateful that since the year 2000, the number of multi-ethnic churches has doubled, and it continues to grow in strength. So out of our church, People's Church, you heard yesterday that the church used to be a 95% or more white congregation. But starting in 1995, our pastor had a vision to make it a church like heaven, every tribe, tongue, and nation doing life together. And as a result of that, we've been able to address some of these issues not in an esoteric way and not because they're just important issues, but because they're issues impacting people in our congregations. So when we start to understand and we start to do church with people who are from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from different racial backgrounds, who have human trafficking issues in their nations and in their communities, and they're in a congregation with you, suddenly it's not an issue of human trafficking. It's Sarah's family. It's Taka's family. And these are people that I do life together with, and so I care about those issues because they're people in my congregation. Some of the ways that we got to those conversations, in 2005, we had an experience that we called the Vision Experience, which was really the genesis of a lot of things that we do at People's Church, which involved 20 weeks, if you can believe that, of people being together in small groups and talking with each other about their life experiences, about racial issues, about the things that they had experienced in their lives. And as a result of those conversations, again, it became reality. And so as we moved forward as a congregation with a new understanding of what each other's life experiences were, we began to get more involved in issues in the community. I'm proud to say that when the incident in Sanford, Florida happened, and there was such hurt going on in the community, and a lot of our African American members of our church weren't sure what kind of response and reception they were going to find at church with this pain and this hurt in their heart. Were they going to be ignored, or were their issues going to be brought to the forefront? They were able to come into the congregation and see people from our church, Caucasians, African Americans, people from the 34 nations that worship with us, at these conversations, at these prayer meetings, at these rallies, being involved in issues of racial justice. And as a result of that, we're able to continue to say, this is not just a church that has a variety of colors. This is a church that really respects the cultures that are in it and will be involved in the issues that face the church. So that's one example of the things that we're doing.
Great. Thank you so much. We've got 3 organizations represented up here, IJM, 821, and World Relief. And so if the 3 of you could possibly just answer this question. So if folks are here and they want to get involved with your organizations, whether they're a large church or a small church, how would they do that, and what would be some ways they could do that?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Hewitt, the Senior U.S. Anti-Trafficking Specialist at World Relief. And our mission is to empower the local church to serve the most vulnerable, because we believe that the local church is the hope of the world. And so our role at World Relief is to equip and empower the church to do that. And we believe that what that looks like is to train. So the ways that we can equip the church and that the church can engage are first through education. We believe that education is an area that we can all grow in, and we're all continuing to grow in. And in that, we offer Hands That Heal trainings, and the Hands That Heal curriculum was created by the Faith Alliance Against Slavery and Trafficking, which was created in 2003 and involves 9 different organizations that are of faith that are partnering together in this work to leverage our response for greater effectiveness. So churches can request a Hands That Heal training, which includes community assessment. And so the community assessment piece is important because that helps churches know what's going on in their communities. So what are the needs? What are the industries where people are being trafficked in their communities? For example, in Baltimore, the crab picking industry and the agricultural industry are huge issues and ways that churches can engage in raising awareness. So from there, churches can also target the resources in the community. So the community mapping exercises that can be done with churches are help to reveal not only the areas where there is a need for attention, so whether it be the labor trafficking industry with agriculture and restaurants and areas where people are being exploited, or the hotel industry and strip malls and strip clubs where people are being exploited for sex. Then looking at the resources in the community. So who is bringing what to the table? As a service provider, we bring interpretation, connection to services and services within the community, and then also what associations, professional associations can be brought to the table to bring resources to the clients we serve. So those are some of the ways that churches can get involved. Another way is advocacy, as we've heard the last couple of days about how churches can engage in that area. The Polaris Project and Shared Hope International has websites that really outline all the ways, but both on the local and the state and the federal level, that we need to strengthen our laws, because the laws, some of them are on the books, but having advocacy around actually enforcing them is a huge way that churches can involve. And also talking with local businesses in the advocacy side about supply chain and how the products that they purchase and that they sell are contributing to the demand for labor trafficking. Further, churches can get involved by doing studies with men's groups. Men's groups can be focusing on the demand side and the true nature of what God intended for sex and how men can heal from the brokenness that our society has created in that area. As Mr. Morris mentioned about schools, churches can engage and advocate that curriculum be integrated into the school system so that youth can be made aware of what's going on in their area and address the root causes. And further, churches can wrap around youth to mentor and to tutor. That's a huge area of need. One of the challenges we found in this work is that when churches want to engage, there's a certain idea or expectation of what that looks like. So, for example, wrapping around a foster family is a way that we can do prevention in churches by supporting them to support the youth so that they have a strong understanding of who they are in God and have the resources to support them. So those are some of the ways that churches can directly engage. And finally, good neighbor teams are a way that World Belief equips churches to engage. We train churches and small groups to have the skills to wrap around clients. So we provide direct services to clients, and one of the ways that churches can support that effort is to both pray for the people that we're serving, to provide resources, and also to provide skills and training. Some of the survivors we serve need basic life skill training. They come into this country and they're exploited here, and in order to start their life over, they want to learn basic skills like being able to sew or being able to cook. So having people within our church take them under their wing and show them these basic skills, build those relationships, and help them feel a part of the family. And so those are some of the ways that we found that we've seen true transformation in survivors as they seek to heal from their exploitation.
Thanks, Amy. That was great. I just want to mention that the curriculum you talked about, the Hands to Heal, that Heal, is a really great curriculum, and it's relatively easy to train because it's laid out so well. It's literally page by page with timings and all of that information. So Bianca, tell us a little bit more about some things that folks can do with you all.
Absolutely. My name is Bianca Waters-Oltoff. I am Chief Storyteller for the A21 campaign, and I'm not just a storyteller for A21. I am also a pastor's wife, and the first time that I heard about human trafficking, I was so overwhelmed. Unlike John Richmond, who's basically Liam Neeson, to the IJM version, I knew I wasn't called to be a freedom fighter. I knew that God had called me to be a freedom writer, and I wanted to use the gifts and the words that God has given me to bring language and context for, can I say, simple folk like myself. That didn't really know how to engage. And so I want to make sure that there's time for everyone. There's resources that are available through our website, but just a few that I want to highlight, specifically speaking to churches or organizations in the community. Curriculum has been spoken about a number of times here, and I think it's vitally important, especially targeting young people who are prone to be at risk for trafficking, or educating youth and identifying what human trafficking is. And so the Department of Education, the DOE in Georgia, has approved a Common Core curriculum that we have put together with video modules, and we are trying to get that rolled out across the nation, and dare I say, the audacious faith that we have in God, across the globe. Our curriculum has gone through the hands of roughly 76,000 students across the states, and we want to get that and more, and we're actually building out, because we know that the target age is 11 to 12 in the United States, we actually want to have a curriculum that's formatted for junior hires as well. But the beautiful thing about that is that it fits directly into the Common Core curriculum for either English, history, or social studies. So if you are an educator, or you know an educator or a principal, and you would like to have this just plopped right into your basic curriculum for your school, or school district, or the state, that resource is available. And then speaking as a pastor's wife, I think that the issue is so overwhelming. How can you get congregations and people involved to care? Especially because there's a lot of compassion fatigue. There's racial injustice, there's thirst, there's hunger, there's AIDS, there's poverty, there's war. This is one more dark spot in humanity. And so we don't want to desensitize or dehumanize. We want to put a name and a face to the victims that are across the globe. We want our victims to become survivors and our survivors to become overcomers. I loved what Brooke said yesterday, and I resonate deeply with that message. And so we know that it's an overwhelming issue that people are facing, and we want to make it not overwhelming. On our website, there's 21 ways to get involved. So whether that is requesting a speaker, someone from our A21 team, or the other organizations that we stand shoulder to shoulder, we know that we are not the only one. We are one of many, and together, collaboratively, we can affect and infiltrate our churches. On our 21 ways to get involved, I think people underestimate their own personal value that they bring to the fight for human trafficking. And so whether it is joining us for a prayer walk, or we actually have an annual Walk for Freedom that reaches across the globe for 24 hours, or leveraging social media. I think people underestimate Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but I handled our external communication, specifically social media, for a number of years, and I've been on team for 4.5 years, and one of the number one things that I have seen people not know the tool that they have in their arsenal to fight human trafficking through its advocacy or awareness is sharing their voice on social media. And so you have access, the average Facebook friend has 320 friends that we don't have access to. And so when you share a post, or you take content, you share a link, you are sharing it with your 320 friends, who will share it with their 320 friends. And before you know it, we are bringing a dark issue to light. And so, again, there's a number of ways. I don't want to hog the time. We stand shoulder to shoulder with organizations, knowing that we all cannot do everything, but we all must do something. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Let's hear from Joe from IJM, and you can tell us a little bit about what some churches can do, whether they're large or small, okay?
Sure, yeah. When Gary Haugen dreamed up IJM about 17 years ago and started to design a Christian organization that would protect the poor from violence, he envisioned two beneficiaries. The obvious beneficiary would be the clients, the people that we rescue and work for transformation, and then long-term the justice systems under which they live in those countries and cities. The second beneficiary that he dreamed up would actually be the global church. He'd always dreamed that IJM would be a catalyst in awakening the global church to God's heart for justice. And so we've designed then over the years, there are over 30 different tools, curriculums, events, resources, creative fundraising ideas that churches could use, or community groups or student groups could use, to then participate and catalyze this awakening in the global church in the work of justice. I'm just going to share a couple of them really quick that are most important to us. The first two are the ones that are the easiest and the hardest to do, and that's to pray and to give generously. Most churches hear that, and they're like, great, okay, but what can we really do? Which I think is a betrayal of how we think of prayer. A couple people have mentioned how important the work of prayer is in this. For us, we do one annual gathering a year that we bring in all of our best resources, and it is our global prayer gathering. I invite you to all come and be a part of that next April. I think it's the best thing we do. It's the best thing you could do in the work of prayer without traveling to all of our 18 field offices personally. So come to the global prayer gathering next year. Pray with us, but you can also pray in lots of other things and lots of other organizations globally and locally that just need prayer support. And then second, giving. Justice is costly. It's costly emotionally, it's costly spiritually, it's also really costly financially. So we need the church to be a really generous support, engaging all kinds of different works that are involved in this restoration and work of justice. So pray and to give. Another tool I would recommend is a friend and colleague, Jim Martin, wrote the book, The Just Church. It's the best playbook that we have on what it means for a church to see justice and discipleship as inseparable. And then the second half of the book is in what are some practical ways a church actually engages in that. Third thing that we've just created, we don't even have very many printed materials on it, is we've recognized the desire of the church to have an actual relational connection with our field offices. At IJM, because of the nature of our work and most of the clients, we can't give you a child and their identity that you could actually support. We don't have a physical building or plant or well that you specifically help build. And so what we've created is a way to partner with a field office. And so we're just piloting this idea. 8 of our 18 field offices are engaging in sort of being open to partnering relationally with U.S. or developing world churches to engage in the work through this some kind of way that we're going to invent that's meaningful and partnering on both sides with our field offices and with churches domestically. And the last thing I'll throw out, since it was mentioned by Dawn yesterday, we do actually rarely, but not a lot, but we do vision trips to the field. And so in October, we have a pastor and church ministry leader trip to India. We're going to visit a bonded labor office and a sex trafficking office that we do. So those occasionally are opportunities we can bring you with us to see the work and experience the work of fighting slavery firsthand. We've also begun to dream, Nikki, you heard speak yesterday, of maybe visiting our operational work in Ghana, which is fighting child labor on Lake Volta. So there are possibilities like that we're dreaming with you of how we could engage the work together.
Great. Well, you know, Gary Hogan came to Northland and preached for one of the weekends. And when we met with him afterwards, he sat several of us down and talked with us and said, so how do you know there's really an issue here in Central Florida? And we all looked at him and we're like, well, we just know. And he goes, well, do you have any numbers? Do you have any statistics? Do you have any information? And we didn't. We really didn't. So that conversation that we had with him really encouraged us as a church to work together with the community to figure that information out. We all knew it. Law enforcement was arresting and people were getting rescued and all of that, but we didn't have anything concrete. So we took that as an opportunity to be able to work with IJM and our local rep there on a community assessment, and also working with Shared Hope International to do a rapid assessment. So those two opportunities are things I just share because they're things that churches can do. We're real good at gathering people and forces and armies and things to do. So there's is my opinion, is a great to-do activity that the church can engage in. So just a word there. So Lisa, want to share with us what Sojourners, how folks can connect with you. And I'm coming back to you, Dawn. I didn't forget about you. I have a very special question for Dawn. So talk to us about how folks can help, large or small.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, Sojourners has been around for about 44 years, started by Jim Wallace and a company of evangelical seminarians at Trinity Divinity School in Chicago. What they realized was that they were born in the midst of a really incredible time in our history. The end of the civil rights movement, the beginning of the women's liberation movement, and the height of the anti-Vietnam War movement. And nobody was talking about these issues in the church. So their very first act of public witness was to cut out all of the scriptures that had anything to do with justice in the Bible, hold it up in the middle of the square at Trinity Divinity School and to say, this is what you have done to our scripture. This is what you've done to it. So from that point on, Sojourners really became, our vocation became shaping the conversation around justice for the church and also on Capitol Hill and in the White House. So we have been hard at work at that in multiple ways. Mainly, first, the flagship is through the magazine. So if you are not a subscriber, become a subscriber. That's a really easy thing to do. And you can also get a really cheap digital, hello, younger people, a digital subscription online. Almost every staffer on the Hill has a subscription to Sojourners. If not, checking the blog every day. This another thing is check out our blog. We have a broad cadre of writers from like the whole spectrum of the church. Not only the mainline church, though I think that we're most associated with that, but that's not the truth. On our blog in particular, it's extremely diverse and really heavy with evangelical voices, actually. So if you want to hear evangelicals thinking about helping to shape the conversations about racial justice, about gender justice, about human trafficking, take a look at our blog. And then the third thing I'll say is that Sojourners, every year we put on a summit called The Summit. We're very creative. And the summit brings together actually leaders, 350 leaders this year in 1 month. So I am now personally inviting you, I'm the program director for the summit. I am now inviting you to the summit. Come to the summit. The summit is a place for leaders of multiple movements to come together to get common understanding in an intersectional way. So we are actually looking at 7 different issues, and we're going to have the leaders, many leaders from many of these movements, on the stage and then in tracks of conversation so they can deepen their own understanding within their own movements of where the next places they need to go. We'll have convenings. We're going to have 7 elders from 7 different movements that will come and do elder huddles with people as they sign up for it, and spiritual directors, because we realize the movement leaders need to be poured back into. So this is a feast. We're really preparing a feast for the movements of America, for the justice movements of America, and you are part of that. So come, June 17th through 20th. For Sojourners now, all things run through the summit. So if you want an on-ramp into Sojourners work, come to the summit. If you want to deepen your work, come to the summit. If you want to take action, come to the summit, because that's going to be a place where we actually figure out what we're going to do. So I'll leave it there.
Great. Well, thank you. I have a question for both Dawn and Sister Ann. If you could talk to us and share with us, what are some of the significant challenges and obstacles that a church will face beginning to think about getting into the topics of anti-human trafficking? What kind of things will they face? What kind of challenges do they need to be prepared for?
Oh, I have the mic, so I guess I'm going first. As Joe said, I come from an IJM background, and churches that want to engage in human trafficking face a significant obstacle in that, for example, if you want to partner with IJM, you're not going to go to the IJM field office because it's a confidential location. It's really not healthy for you to go and hug girls that have been rescued from sex trafficking. It's kind of dysfunctional in a lot of ways. There is an active enemy on the other side called organized crime, and so that is something that requires professional sort of intervention. And so, yet we also know, those of us who are in church world, that resources flow when people can not only just give their money, but they can give their time, their hands and their feet. So you have this paradox where you have to try to engage people in something that is difficult to engage. So as Joe was talking about church partnerships with IJM, Crossroads has found ways to engage our people in relationship with survivors of sex trafficking. We've had to do it carefully. We've had to do it with a lot of discipline, but we've done it. And I'll just go through some of the description of that. But before I do that, I just say that relationship, if you want to motivate your people to engage, you need relationship. You need relationship with the beneficiaries. You can't understand what their problems are until you know who they are, until you know their faces and know their names. You're not going to get your people motivated until they understand that they're talking about, people with names and faces. So just to talk about how we've done that real briefly. We have, through a WebEx platform, we have something called eWizKids. Crossroads does WizKids tutoring with, I don't know, maybe 1,000 kids. Chuck's here, he knows. A zillion kids in inner city, in underprivileged schools in Cincinnati, where we have mentoring relationships that literally have lasted, in some cases, almost a decade. Kids going to college and their scores way up. What we did was we applied that platform to English language tutoring. We have volunteers who come in, they get up at like 5:30 in the morning to come into Crossroads, and they get on the WebEx and they go through doing ESL with girls in aftercare homes in India. And these ladies who wouldn't get up at 5:30 in the morning for anything are getting up excited, and then they are walking on air when they get to leave, because they're actually interacting and they have these relationships with these girls in Mumbai and in Calcutta. We also have relationships with aftercare partners, as well as with the field offices in Mumbai and Calcutta. The key with sex trafficking eradication is you must have aftercare. If you do not have aftercare, the whole project fails. Girls must testify. They won't testify until someone has convinced them that there's hope for them. That's true internationally, that's true in the United States, and so one thing Crossroads has been able to do is invest in aftercare in those places, and we have trips in which, because we do the aftercare with a local Indian church, we can send people over to do things with the local Indian church. We have Pastor Vivian and Pastor Christopher from Mumbai are here. They are key partners with the Maharashtra Baptist Society in Mumbai, and we couldn't do the aftercare homes without them, so our trips were allowed, we can bring people over who can engage with the homes at an appropriate level, engage with the local Indian church who the work would not be possible with otherwise. And then finally, the primary intersection for domestic trafficking, if your church wants to engage in this, is the place where traffickers recruit girls in the United States. which is ironically the same place that the United States and state governments put girls who've been rescued from trafficking, the foster care system. We read about Operation Cross Country. And I used to work for the U.S. Attorney's Office. Claims 186 girls rescued. Where are those girls? There's probably 80 beds for aftercare in the entire country that are already full when a cross country happens. Where are they now? Well, they put them into the aftercare. They put them into the aftercare that we have, which is the foster care system, which, as you know, is broken. It's broken for foster kids, let alone for girls who have been the subject of organized crime and have been raped 10, 20 times a day for years on end. You in your congregations already have people who are doing foster care. I promise you that trafficking survivors, mostly African American, mostly minority, are going through that foster care system, and you already have people in it. What if you were to provide support? What if you were to generate more foster parents from your community? There's a ratio. I heard Dobson talk from Focus on the Family one time about if every church just did one foster kid, just up the level by one, there would be no one left in the foster care system, right? So this is a direct intersection. This is something that is doable. But until you get in the relationships with the survivors, it's going to be really difficult to do everything else. Everything seems to flow from those relationships.
Wow, thank you so much. I really resonate with you with the foster care system. That's something we at Northland are really trying to encourage our congregation to do, to step up and be trained and take on some of these kids. And in Florida, and I don't know if it's happening here, but there's specific training for therapeutic foster care homes. I don't know if that's spread here yet, but it is an amazing opportunity. So I'm going to rah-rah behind you on that one as well. Sister Ann, tell us, what are some of the obstacles and challenges?
Well, I think I'd rather tell you some of the strengths. As Catholic sisters in the U.S., we're pretty well positioned to respond to human trafficking. Most of us are educators, so we have educational institutions, we have healthcare institutions, we have social service institutions where we encounter people who are engaged in the life, and we can train people in all of those areas to recognize and respond to the needs that we see. So we're doing educational training through our own institutions. We've set up a national map. We're mapping all the coalitions where we have speakers who can go out and talk to anybody of any faith who will listen at any level to talk to them about human trafficking, how they can get involved, how we can be effective together. I was sitting on that side of the auditorium and I kept watching Matt, and the first thing he wrote was, "We need collaboration." And we recognize that among ourselves. We're many, many communities throughout this country and throughout the world. So we're trying to collect our own resources that we have within our congregations. We're also trying to collect and connect the other groups that we work with that are not faith-based, attorneys general, local coalitions of interested men and women, groups with other churches. We're pretty good connectors. We're community people. So that's our mission. And I think also, you may be aware, I know the people in Washington are aware, for the last 41 years, Catholic women have had their own lobby in Washington, D.C., network. So we've been using that networking terminology for quite a while. And so over these past 4 decades, we've gotten pretty good at lobbying. And with the help of good friends like Mara Vanderslice, who's been able to open doors for us and some of our other friends in Washington, we feel that we've been able to be pretty effective in addressing issues that are very, very important to us. We also have a number of institutions, and we run a number of shelters, and we work with other groups that run shelters. And when we see women who are able, who have been re-enabled to enter the workforce or to have higher education, we're encouraging our own institutions to make available scholarships for men and women who have been trafficked, to give special preference in our own institutions for job openings to men and women who have been trafficked, so they can get that economic leg up, and so they won't be just survivors. But we'd like more Brooke Bellows. We'd like to see thrivers and champions. So, and we think that's most consistent with our faith, and all of our faith is to to restore and respect the human dignity of every person, and to help them to live out what is God's dream for them in our society in the context of community, and to reassert their own authority and contribute again to the larger community, the larger human community, the larger faith community.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I thank you all for the work that you're doing and continue to do it, and I hope that you all got something out of this. Thanks so much.